Hey, what's up, guys? You're now listening to Devo with Uncle Theo. Today is day 88, and we're going to cover Judges chapter 17 through 19. Last time we left off, we finished the story of Samson, and we saw all of the good, bad, and ugly with Samson, and God uses him. In fact, his name is brought up again in Hebrews 11, which is what is considered the hall of faith. In fact, Gideon's name is there as well. And he has that last act of faith at the end of his life where he's blinded. They plucked his eyeballs out and he cries out to the Lord. And it says that he killed more Philistines in the moment of that sacrificial death than he did in his entire life. And that takes us into another story here in chapter 17. And I'm here to tell you it doesn't get better. It's going to continue to get worse. And so this is the story of a guy named Micah. And so Micah steals 1,100 pieces of silver from his mother. And this is how the story starts off. And his mother pronounces a curse on whoever stole it. And Micah said, hey, wait a minute, that was me. Mom, don't curse me. And her response to this will shock you. Let's pick up in verse 1. Now there was a man of the hill country of Ephraim whose name was Micah. He said to his mother, the 1,100 pieces of silver which were taken from you, about which you uttered a curse in my hearing, behold, the silver is with me. I took it. Now look at the mother's response. Not, you're about to get a spanking. Not, you're about to get disciplined. Not, I'm about to call the officials. Look at this. And his mother said, blessed be my son by the Lord. He steals. And the mother says, blessed be you by Yahweh. This is how wicked it is during this time. And so he returns the 1,100 pieces of silver, and his mother says to him, I wholly dedicate the silver of my hand to the Lord, right? But look at what she says to make a graven image and a molten image. Now, therefore, I will return them to you, so that when he returned the silver to his mother took 200 pieces of silver and gave them to a silversmith who made them into a graven image and a molten image. So remember, we talked about this. 1,100 pieces of silver was somewhere between $750K and upwards of $6 million. And she takes some of this to make an idol in the name of Yahweh. What does this sound like? This sounds just like Gideon. This sounds just like Exodus 32, where they made the golden calf. And this just shows us we're back towards Israel at its worst. And this is the reason why. Verse 6 unlocks the book of Judges. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Every man did what was right in his own eyes. And that's poking at two things. One, that Yahweh isn't on the throne in these people's lives, and they're doing whatever is right in their own eyes. But two, we're getting close to where there's a need for a king. Remember, Deuteronomy 17 gave us the prescription of a king. So God always wanted a king, and he knew Israel needed a king. And this is showing the result of it. Without a leader, they're dividing. But let's keep going down this road because it's going to get worse. So verse 7, now this young man from Bethlehem in Judah, of the family of Judah, who was a Levite, and he was staying there. Then the man departed from the city from Bethlehem in Judah to stay wherever he might find a place. And as he made his journey, he came to the hill country of Ephraim, to the house of Micah. So for one, this Levite isn't in one of the 48 Levitical cities. He's wandering, so he's not being obedient. Two, that's showing you that Israel isn't taking care of their Levites because he's not there for a reason. Maybe they aren't tithing or providing or giving to this guy. But you just see disobedience all over. So this guy's wandering. He's just lollygagging down the street. And Micah stops him in verse 9. He says, hey, where do you come from? And he said to him, I'm a Levite from Bethlehem in Judah. I'm going to stay wherever I may find a place. And Micah said to him, dwell with me and be a father and a priest to me. I will give you 10 pieces of silver a year, a suit of clothes, and your maintenance. So the Levite went in and agreed to live with the man. In verse 13, it says, then Micah said, now I know that the Lord will prosper me, seeing that I have a Levite as priest. Now, come on, you got to get how twisted and wicked this is. First, he's stealing from his mom. He reveals he stole from his mom when she said a curse on whoever stole from her. When he reveals it, his mom says, oh, no, son, I bless you for stealing from me. In fact, let's take some of that money and make an idol, a false idol to Yahweh. They make this idol, and just so happened a priest is wandering down the street. He's like, ooh, I could get a priest for my idol. Hey, come here, priest. Come here, Levite. Will you be a priest over my idol for me? I'll take care of you, give you your daily allotment, and even pay you annually. And he says, okay. So they got this false idol. They got a priest. And then he says, I know the Lord will prosper me now because I have a priest. And this takes us to chapter 18, and it gets even worse. So the Danites come on the scene in chapter 18. It says, in those days, there were no king in Israel. And in those days, a tribe of the Danites was seeking an inheritance for themselves to live in. For until that day, an inheritance had not been allotted to them as a possession among the tribes of Israel. So they send 5 men out of their whole tribe, valiant men, to spy out the land and search for him. So they come to this place, this hill country in Ephraim, to the house of Micah, and he's lodging there. So one, it tells you Dan couldn't conquer the land. We see that. So that's disobedience there. They say, since we can't conquer the land, instead, we'll just move. We'll go anywhere. So they're disobeying the Lord. They're wandering. So they come to the house of Micah, and they recognize the voice of the young man, the Levite. And they turned aside there and said to him, who brought you here? And what are you doing in this place? And what do you have here? And he said to them, thus and so has Michael done for me. He has hired me, and I have become his priest. They said to him, inquire of God, please, that we may know whether our way of which we are going will be prosperous. And the priest said to them, go in peace. Your way in which you are going has the Lord's approval. So it's all kind of wicked stuff going on here. So the 5 men depart. So they depart and they go back and report back. In verse 9, it says, we went there and the land is very good. They come to the conclusion, let's not delay. Let's go and possess the land. So the 5 men who went out to spy the land in verse 15. So the 5 men come back and said to their kinsmen, do you know that there are in these houses an ephod and the household idols and a graven image and a molten image? Now therefore consider what you shall do. They turned aside there and came to the house of the young man, the Levite, in the house of Micah, and asked him for his welfare. The 600 men armed with their weapons of war, who were of the sons of Dan, stood at the entrance of the gate. Now the 5 men who went out to spy out the land went up and entered there, and they took the graven image and the ephod and the household idols and the molten image, while the priest stood at the entrance of the gate with the 600 armed men. And so they take all of Micah's possessions, his idol, his ephod, everything, all of the false idols that he's made. The Danites just come take all of that. They ransack him. And the priest says, hey, what are you doing? Why are you taking all of this? They tell him to be quiet, be silent, put your hand over your mouth, and come with us. And then they give him some good logic. They say, is it better for you to be a priest to the house of one man or be the priest to a tribe and a family of Israel? And so the priest, it says his heart was glad then. He was like, hey, good point. And so he took the ephod and the household idols and the graven image and went with the people. So they depart. And after they had gone a distance from the house of Micah, the men who were in the houses near Micah assembled and overtook the sons of Dan. They cried to the sons of Dan, who turned around and said to Micah, what's the matter with you that you have assembled together? He said, you've taken my gods, which I have made, and the priests, and have gone away. And what do I do besides? How can you say to me, what's the matter with you? You stole everything from me and my priests, and now you're asking me what's wrong with me. How could you even say this? Look at what they say in verse 25. The sons of Dan said to him, do not let your voice be heard among us, or else fierce men will fall upon you, and you will lose your life with the lives of your household. So the Danites say, look, Micah, you can either go home or you can die right now. Take your pick. Micah picks. Verse 26. Micah saw that they were too strong for him. He turned and went back to his house. Look at the wickedness that's happening here. But verse 30 kills it. Check this out. The sons of Dan set up for themselves the graven image, and we finally get the name of the priest. Guess what his name is? And Jonathan, the son of Gershom, the son of Moses. Wow. This is how far the nation has declined. This priest is revealed to be Moses' grandson. This is how wicked it's gotten. Moses' grandson has agreed to be a priest for a false idol for one man. And when he gets a better deal for a tribe, he trades on them and becomes the priest for the tribe. And some translations may even say Manasseh. And the reason behind that is because in the Hebrew, it's written in consonants. And so the word Moses and Manasseh would have the same consonants. And a lot of the copiers of the Bible put a word that's similar to our N called a nun. They put it in superscript because they can't force themselves to write that this could have possibly been the grandson of Moses. So in the text, you'll see that N added in there, and some people just bring it into the translation and translate it Manasseh. But when really the accurate translation is Moses, and you should see that textual critical note in your margins or somewhere in your Bible if it's revealing that to you there. But this is how far they've declined, that the grandson of Moses is a priest to false idols. This blows my mind. This blows all of my circuits, that you can get this far just in 2 generations. It's unbelievable. And it gets worse. We move into chapter 19 and we get that same statement. Now it came about in those days when there was no king in Israel, there was a certain Levite staying in a remote part of a hill country who took a concubine for himself from Bethlehem in Judah. But his concubine played the harlot against him, and she went away from him to her father's house in Bethlehem in Judah, and was there for a period of 4 months. So he arose and went after her to speak tenderly to her in order to bring her back, taking with him his servant and a pair of donkeys. So she brought him into her father's house, and when the girl's father saw him, he was glad to meet him. His father-in-law, the girl's father, detained him, and he remained with him 3 days. So they ate and drank and lodged there. And on the 4th day, he got up to go. And the father-in-law said, "Hey, stay a little longer, have a piece of bread." So they both sat down and ate and drank together. And the girl's father said to him, "Please be willing to spend the night and let your heart be merry." And then the man arose to go, but the father-in-law urged him to spend the night there again. And on the 5th day, he arose to go early in the morning. And the girl's father said, "Please sustain yourself and wait until afternoon." So both of them ate. And when the man arose to go with his concubine and servant, the girl's father said to him, "Behold, now the day is coming to an end. Spend the night here that your heart may be merry. Then tomorrow you may arise early for your journey so that you may go home." But the man was not willing to spend the night. He arose and departed and came to a place opposite of Jabez, that is Jerusalem. So they're in this town, and the servant says to his master, "Please come and let us turn aside into this city of the Jebusites and spend the night in it." However, the master said to him, "We will not turn aside into the city of foreigners who are not the sons of Israel, but we will go as far as Gibeah." And he said to his servant, "Come and let us approach one of these places, and we will spend the night at Gibeah or Ramah." So they passed along and went on their way, and the sun set on them near Gibeah, which belongs to Benjamin. They turned aside there in order to enter and lodge in Gibeah. So verse 16, there's this old man coming out of the field from his work in the evening. Now the man was from the hill country of Ephraim, and he was staying at Gibeah, but the men of the place were Benjaminites. And the old man says, "Where are you going, and where do you come from?" And he said to them, "We're passing from Bethlehem to Judah, to the remote part of the hill country of Ephraim. But I am now going to my house, and no man will take me into his house." And the old man says to him, "Peace to you. Only let me take care of all your needs. However, do not spend the night in the open square." So the old man knows that there's danger in their place. So he took him to his house. And it says in verse 22, while they were celebrating, behold, the men of the city, certain worthless fellows, surrounded the house, pounding on the door. And they spoke to the owner of the house, the old man, saying, "Bring out the man who came into your house, that we may have relations with him." Then the man, the owner of the house, went to them and said, "No, my fellows, please do not act so wickedly. Since this man has come into my house, do not commit this act of folly." He says, "Here is my virgin daughter and his concubine. Please let me bring them out, that you may ravish them and do to them whatever you wish. but do not commit such an act of folly against this man. So you see that we're getting a similar situation to what? Sodom and Gomorrah. Same scenario. And the irony of that is he didn't want to go in a foreign land. He wanted to be amongst his people. But look at how far his people have declined. Being amongst his people has put him in this situation where the concubine and his daughter are violated and abused all night until morning. And then they let her go at the approach of dawn. And as the day began to draw, the woman came and fell down at the doorway of the man's house where the master was until daylight. And listen to what the master says to her after leaving her out there to be violated all night. You know, the man who spoke gently to get her back. He just looks at her in verse 28 and he says, "Get up, let's go." But there was no answer. So look at what he does. He places her on the donkey, and the man arose and went to his home. And when he got home, he took a knife and laid a hold of his concubine. He cuts her up into 12 pieces, limb by limb, and he sends her out all throughout the tribe of Israel, basically as a sign saying, this is what happened to my concubine, and I'm letting everybody know about it. And he sends her pieces out to the 12 tribes. And it says, nothing like this has ever happened or been seen from the day that the sons of Israel came up from the land of Egypt to this day. Consider it, take counsel, and speak up. And that was the message. And that's how our chapter ends today. And we'll pick up tomorrow. A civil war is going to break out because of this wicked, violent act and because of the grotesque nature of him sending those body parts out. And that's where we are, ladies and gentlemen, in the book of Judges. I told you it was going to get worse. We got one more day, but we're not done. We got one more day in this book. And I hate to break it to you, we're not going to turn a corner till it getting better. We're going to keep going downhill. And we'll pick that up tomorrow. You guys take care.